What is renunciation? It is when you really discover your own worth. Okay, so let's go back now into the meditation mode. You can stay lying down if you want. I know you're tired. You can meditate lying down. If you fall asleep, someone will come and sit on you. And but you can. You might be better in your sleep. You never know. You might listen more deeply when you're asleep. So, point is, go back into meditative mode, and then we're in a bright sky now. And so the bright sky is filled with Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, like that giant Buddha yesterday in the Punakatong. And we're like in the presence of all these infinite enlightened beings, which are just our way of imagining the immediate presence and total interpenetrating and interfusing presence of the mind of ultimate reality of all Buddhas, the Dharmakaya, the truth body of all Buddhas. So we're imagining that as manifest to us in these forms of enlightened beings, Nagarjuna, Tsongkhapa, Shakyamuni, Padmasambhava, Vajrasattva, whoever we want to. And they're there and they're in the sky, and you can visualize that they're chatting with each other in the sky, like they're sitting all on their jewel thrones up on the giant tree, and they're in the sunshine and the cloud, fluffy cloud, and they're saying, hey, look, those GeoX folks down there are like meditating for 2 minutes in the middle of their busy schedule. They're meditating for 1 or 2 minutes. They're thinking about the deeper things in life. Isn't that great? And they're muttering to each other. I wonder if they fall asleep after 2 minutes. I wonder if their mind is wandering and they're worrying about the shopping. I wonder whatever. You know, like, did they wash their hands? Did they go to the bathroom? What are they thinking, really? They're chuckling to each other, but they're sending us blessings, just like sunshine and moonshine, flowing down, rainbow jewel light rays, filling us up. And we dissolve in our normal, habitual, like, unworthy sense of self. And we arise in our meditative self that is diaphanous and transparent, like a matrix being that is aware of being a matrix being, that is aware that is the one. And we realize our nexus of being the one in the midst of all of the beings all around us. Think there's our whole family, all our loved ones, all our compatriots, all our fellow team members, all our colleagues, and the ones we like, and then they're in front of us are the ones we sort of barely know, and we don't really feel strongly about one way or the other, but really they could be our loved ones. We could certainly know that. And then on the other side are our hated ones, our unloved ones. And they unfortunately could have been our loved ones. They might be our exes, might be over there with the bad ones now, and we dislike them. But this time we're not disliking them. What we're doing is we're spreading that light that we're receiving from the jewel tree, spreading it to them, and we're meditating for them. So if we come to a new insight and a new breakthrough in our mind or a new opening of our heart, then that immediately will resonate to them, and they will feel better, and they will be happier about us and about themselves. We want to share that with them immediately. The minute we get a new insight, we wanted to share it. We wanted to, and that doesn't mean we go and like shout at people about it or brainwash them. It just means we want to just resonate out to them, like a ripple in a stone plopping in a pond and then sending ripples out and ripple out across the surface of the ocean of the minds of all the beings that we love. And the ones that we just know and the ones that we don't love, but we have loved and we will love and we could love and we're going to love when we're meditating anyway. Like Baba Ramdas has George W. on his shrine. Wonderful. Just enjoy this environment and be in it and feel blessed and buoyed and feel different. If you don't, any of you hear any thought coming up in your mind like, what am I doing? How can this be? I can't understand what? I don't visualize anything. I'm not going to get a sunburn or what? Just to ignore all of that, the usual thing of you can't and you won't and it doesn't and it isn't and whatever it is, and just let that play like extra voices, extra channels on a radio that you're not tuning to. And what you're tuning to is the channel of where you have a confidence. You are the blessed one, blessed by all enlightened beings. You are also the agent of blessing of all that you know. You want to be a blessing for all the beings that you know and love. You don't want to be a problem for them. You want to be a blessing for them. So you want that you're reflecting the light out to them that you receive from the great sunshine of all enlightened beings. And then you turn your mind. Now you're in this state, and then forget about the details of it so you don't feel frustrated that you can't hold it stably in your mind, and just feel that you are in this special environment. You're buoyed up, filled with light and energy. All the doubt has flowed out of your body and mind like a darkness is flowing into the earth. And then turn your mind to the first step in the path, which is self-appreciation, evaluation of your own special human embodiment endowed with liberty and opportunity. You're not living in a hell state, you're not in a war zone, you're not in an epidemic zone, you're not like dying of some disease, you're not deaf, dumb, and blind, you're not like have Alzheimer's, you're not an idiot, you're not like dysfunctional, you have intelligence, you have freedom, you're not a slave of somebody. So that's an amazing type of human being. Then you're in a place with opportunities, you have access to teachings about a new kind of reality, which is, or maybe a more real type of reality, where you have the opportunity to become anything beyond what you can imagine you could be, everything you could wish to be. A great source of happiness and blessing and joy for all beings that can even know you or even think of you. You can become such a being, which is like a bodhisattva or Buddha type of being. And you have access and opportunity to all these methods. You have the time to implement them. What a fantastic evolutionary moment in your existence. It's taken you billions of lives to reach this point. It were very difficult to have reached. You could waste more lives, billions more, not doing anything useful with it, losing this opportunity, going to worse embodiment. And if you don't take attention to yourself, you could and you will, if you let the natural inertia rolling downhill. And then second, remember now that once you feel really precious about your own state of being, really respectful of yourself, you then think about your death, how you are certain you will experience that death, you will die, you will lose this particular body-mind structure and process and continuum. You don't know when it will be. It could be any time, unfortunately. But you should be ready for it and be in your full liveliness, full alertness, and full mindfulness, and full lovingness, and full openness of wisdom. And when you do die, it is the state of being. It is how you are in the moment. It is how you're being here now, as Ram Dass said. It is how you are doing that, how full you find this moment that will give you the fullness of ongoing, continuous moments, especially in the subsequent dream-like subtle state, soul state that you will experience after you leave this particular physical embodiment. And then you're very keyed up on that. And then you turn your mind to the third theme here, which is the theme of the cause and effect of evolution, the tenfold positive and the tenfold negative types of habits that lead to positive and negative destinies. And you think about all of them, but I'm not going to list them now. You just remember them, that therefore every little thing that you do, even your own mind, if you have a momentary thought of something negative, like, oh, I can't really do this, or this is too much for me, or I just, oh, that's not what I do, or whatever, some kind of little affirmation, a little assertion of your own limitation that might come into your mind in the form of a thought. If you just like say, wait, whoa, who is that? Question it. Don't listen to it. It's not your real voice. It's a voice imprinted in you, maybe in your youth, when some parent told you you couldn't do something, or some sister or brother or schoolmate or teacher put you down, and then you got into that, if I can't do this, I can't, you became the little train that couldn't. And just ignore it, and just open your mind to be, you are completely don't know what you can do. And you could have a new insight any time. And you could have a new pulse of energy and vitality course through your vein at any time, and a new soupçon of bliss emerge from within your heart. Feeling of peace and relaxation. You never know what can happen. So then suddenly you're open to it happening. That is the open, realistic mind. And that tiny little opening in your mind, in a little moment of meditating, 30 seconds of meditating, could have a vast effect for many hundreds of lifetimes. It could be the first step on an escalator leading to Buddhahood within a very short period of time. It's a very powerful thing, just that change of thought. Just as it's a powerful thing to let your thought just go in some habitual way, without any effort to restrain it, because you think it's just you and there's nothing you can do, because that's itself a false concept that you have. So this is sort of becoming more mindful of the causality of your body-mind continuum experience, and becoming more alert, therefore, to improving, ameliorating it, and opening it, and being more full in the present experience of it, and being more realistic in your view. Aware that there is nothing wasted, good or bad, nothing without consequence, good or bad, and that everything that you have now is the consequence of vast good that you have done and been. So that's that third theme. And then the fourth theme, and final one for today's meditation, most important one too, is the meditation on the suffering suffering of the unenlightened life cycle, life and death cycle. And this, of course, is a very profound thing and very vast. That has to do with reviewing your entire cosmology and thinking about all of the conditions of life and thinking about what we talked about yesterday on the past, about how once you are just you inside your skin versus the whole huge vast universe, and with some momentary alliances with other beings that temporarily, like some little love affair or some little birth existence, some little blood relation, some little membership, joint membership, but basically you're you and your skin and everything else is other. Once you're in that situation, which is the unenlightened situation, according at least to the enlightened beings, Buddhists, not only Buddhists, but all of them, it is an untenable position you're in. And to feel paranoid and to feel anxious and to feel continuous awareness of being miserable in that situation with only tiny moments of relief is actually realistic. And therefore the reason, and then you meditate all of the different types of possible beings that you could be, where you still would be one being inside your skin against every other being, even if you were God. If you were a vast God, like some huge being, still, huge is nothing compared to infinite. And there's infinite other gods and huge beings and other universes, and you still less than a flea, less than a microbe, less than a subatomic energy particle in comparison with infinity. However big you are. Therefore, as long as you're an isolated, separated thing, like I'm Brahma, or I'm Vishnu, I'm Krishna, I'm Shiva, I'm Buddha, even if you think Buddha is that sort of being, some sort of separate being, which it isn't, but if you think so, none of those states of being are worth seeking, because all of them are prey to suffering. There is the suffering of suffering, which is obvious, that is when you suffer. You feel pain, mental or physical. Then there's what you normally think of as happiness, which is only the suffering of change, because it never lasts, because the big world absorbs that happiness and it brings suffering in its wake. And because, you run out of steam on that happiness, and then you don't even appreciate it yourself because you feel insecure about it. And so that relative happiness that goes back and forth with suffering is only temporary relief, and therefore it's called the suffering of change. And it's still frustrating because there's never enough. And then the most difficult suffering to understand is called the cosmic suffering, or the suffering of composition, or the suffering of creation. And that's very subtle, and in a way it's not even necessary for us to think about unless we are a bit yogis or can imagine what the life of the gods is like. And it's hard for us to imagine that, because imagine if you were a being who had a sort of experience of yourself as being a vast space of huge golden energy, like Brahma's name, Hiranyagarbha, the golden egg. Like you were one vast egg and you were everything in some way, and you were just a vast golden something, and you seemed like you were all alone in the universe. But yet, this was having turned away from all the other relative beings and things. You just were you. So it's kind of a false oneness with other beings, because there are no other beings really who are not you. It's just you. And you're it. They no longer exist. And they're seen as an illusion. But then if you had such an experience, you might think you were pretty great, and that was pretty good. And you wouldn't imagine that could be thought of as a suffering. But actually it is, because it's something you enter into, and it's a state known as the state of infinite space, or the state of infinite consciousness, or even it is the state of the fourth state beyond consciousness and unconsciousness, almost seeming like an enlightenment state, and yet it is a state of total aloofness and isolation. It is a state that has a threshold, because there was a time when you didn't realize it, and then you come to realize it. And therefore, once it is something that is created by causation, even though it seems to be a mental state with no parts, it nevertheless exists on a living continuum, and therefore it is something that will cease in the future. Therefore, it is a kind of suffering of change. And great Brahma realized that, and that is why he tried to study. He did study, actually, extensively with the Buddha, because he realized that those divine realms of samadhi, them in themselves, are not nirvana. Nirvana is only bliss, the only kind of possible bliss that is stable, that is permanent, that is absolute, is a bliss that you realize you always had, and that does not exclude other beings, and even beings who are not in a state of bliss. It is a bliss that is total compassion. It is a bliss that is completely encompassing of duality and of suffering beings. Not one that turns away from them aloofly. So that's the third type of suffering, very difficult. I got it one time, like the Buddha mind, the way the Buddha mind teaches the gods, who are in these states of like trillion aeon bliss. They're in jacuzzis that last for a trillion aeons in vast cosmic spheres. They don't have ordinary bodies even. They're just vast, like whales of energy, like giant red stars or something, huge beings. And what Buddha does is his consciousness helps them by providing them a mirror of time. And in that mirror of time, their vast, sort of expanded, almost unthinking awareness of sort of this kind of bliss that they have for themselves alone, they see it coming to an end. It stimulates that clairvoyance that they have, that it will come to an end, and then they can't bear that it comes to an end because it's so ecstatic. And that's how they realize their own suffering, and that's how then they realize that they have to develop a deeper kind of bliss, one that does not exclude others, and that does not exclude others' suffering. That then they become Buddhas. I know that's a little difficult, but the point is, all I'm saying at this point is that we come to a conviction that any state of life that is still self-centered, that is still me, even if it's an infinite me, opposed and has lost sight of other beings and things at some moment in time, any such state, or even within a more or less grandiose thing like being a king, or being the president, or being a movie star, or being like a greatest beauty, or being like, I don't know, Bill Gates, or like quadrillionaire, or whatever it is, none of them are worthwhile. They all are really still suffering. Even they seem so great when you fantasize about them. Anytime you get to those states, you realize that they're not enough. That's why billionaires are not satisfied. Billionaires are trying to be multi-billionaires. And they're pissed off about the next guy who has several billion. Gates has 100 billion, but he's mad because Ellison is maybe pushing for 150. And it's all meaningless. They can't possibly even use all of it. They'll be dead long before. But it's just nothing is satisfying. And those are just paltry human states anyway. It's more, the divine states are more powerful and more difficult to remember. But anyway, the point is you get this point as you meditate, and you resolve in your mind that any kind of goal or motivation that you will have for your own ambition, I'm going to be loved by many people. I'm going to be admired. I'm going to be a great success. I'm going to be rich. I'm going to be high class. I'm going to rule. I'm going to be powerful. I'm going to be famous. Whatever it might be, I'm going to be skillful, be a great musician, an artist, whatever you might think. None of them are worthwhile. And therefore, you can happily excuse yourself from the duty and obligation to achieve any of it. Because you know ahead of time now, by reflecting on the suffering of the unenlightened life, that is the self-centered life, you know that they won't be satisfactory when you get to them. Even though you think now that they will be, you sort of use your critical thought and you realize they won't be, by either analogy of people who seem to have attained success and yet then destroyed themselves somehow, by being dissatisfied, or by just looking at your own experience and remembering when you graduated from here, or you got the honorable award from there, and you jumped, I'm so happy I got it, and then you stub your toe, or you bang into a wall, or somebody puts you down, or doesn't congratulate you, and then you get all upset. So it doesn't last at all, that feeling of success. So it's not worth achieving. So you're free, you're excused. This is now the mind of transcendent renunciation. It's the mind of dropping out from all of the imposed obligations of the worldly life that have been laid upon you, that you think you must do and must achieve and must be and must become. None of them are worth anything. They are all just further states of suffering. And they will all just lead to further states of disillusion. And therefore, when you're utterly disillusioned about these things, you have a feeling, an inner feeling of complete freedom. Like, for example, in our case, we're mostly Americans, and our Russian friends are with us, and our European friends. But they're living in a way, the similar industrial, late industrial, post-industrial world. And one of the things about the post-industrial world is there's no time. Everyone's busy. You got to do more and more. Even you already have more than enough for 3 lifetimes. You have to do more. And you're always like the phone is ringing and this and that. And you're feeling pressed and stressed. And how much can you pack in? Even if you add to it spiritual things, it's like, we got to do more of them. You've got to have more prostrations and more mantras and more this and more that. Because we have that kind of Protestant ethic of achieve and do and stress. We're stressed. We're totally stressed. We don't just happily do nothing. When we sat down here and I said, let's just stay here forever, forget about it. Everyone's like, what? That's not an itinerary. we got to get there. And we're going to see that place and this one. And then take a picture of it to take back in our thing and get a souvenir from the other one. And that was like sacrilege. Let's just stay here. But actually, we could do worse than just stay here. I would go back and forth to that restaurant. They'd be very sick of us. They'd have to pay a little extra. You know, they trot out some new paintings. Whatever. They might lower their prices. You know, we go swimming in a stream there and have a heart attack from the cold. Or get stimulated. We could do worse. Point is, why don't we live in the moment? Why don't we be here now? Why don't we enjoy anything? Because we're rushing for another thing. Because we live in post-industrial, post-modern, stressed out situation. Gotta do more. Gotta get more. Gotta be more. Even if we're on a Buddha path, we think we do it like that. We gotta do it fast. Although there is a way of doing that. Oh, that's my excuse. Whereas now we're in the mind of transcendent renunciation, we drop out. Who cares whether you have the fancy shoe, or you have this, or that, or the sandal? You wear the same old thing. Who cares? You excuse yourself from all the needs and necessities, false needs and necessities. This is transcendent renunciation. You inventory your lifestyle. How many moments do you live in a day? How many days in a week, weeks in a month, months in a year? How many years left in your life? Even the most optimistic prognostication of whatever age you are. How many are there? How many minutes and what are there? And then how do you think you're going to be spending those minutes? How many of them chewing food? How many of them cooking food? How many of them shopping for food? How many of them earning the money to pay for someone to cook and shop and feed? And then you got to pay for the teeth to chew them after a while. And then you have to maintain the teeth. And then they got to do another implant and another thing. And then you have to detox from all the weird chemicals in the food. Then the house. How many houses do you need? How many rooms in the house? How much for the oil to heat it? How many cars? How many this and that? How much for the children? What are you going to spend your life on? You're going to sleep at least 8 to 10 hours a night on average. You're going to worry 2 or 3 hours a day. You're going to watch television 2 or 3 hours a day. You got to keep up. You're going to read newspapers an hour a day. You're going to eat, shop, work. How many minutes are you going to be in the moment? Or then you want to have a meditation garden. Then how long is it going to take you to make the meditation garden? How much is it going to cost you? Who are you going to hire to make it? How are you going to do it? Then how long are you going to actually meditate in the meditation garden? Because you're doing all these things that are not quality of life things. Because you're supposed to do them, you think. But if you meditate on suffering, if you meditate on the inexorability of cause and effect of karmic evolution, if you meditate on the immediacy of death, if you meditate on your preciousness of your human embodiment endowed with liberty and opportunity, you will stop doing the many unnecessary things. That is why, in a way, even the term monk is wrong for a Buddhist bhikshu or bhikshuni. Monk or nun, a wrong term. They are born out of the theistic tradition of Christianity. Monk, nun. Monk means the lone person who goes off to isolate themselves because the world is so horrible, and so on. Whereas a bhikshu means someone who goes on permanent vacation. They just get a free lunch from the other nice people. If they don't get a lunch, then they don't eat lunch. Then if they die happy. They just wear one robe, they have one pair of sandals or barefoot, they just live peacefully. And actually, people take care of them nicely. And therefore, they only survive really in more generous, wealthy countries where people realize that a person who has achieved transcendence of mind is a great treasure just to be in their presence, because when you're with such a being, you feel like more relaxed because you feel like maybe I don't really have to worry about this and that. You know, Mark Twain's great teaching, the worst things in my life never happened to me. I love that. How many things are you worrying about right now in the last day, riding on the bus? How many things did you worry about in your future that won't happen to you? A lot. And yet you felt all the anxiety ahead of time. What if I have a bad bed tonight and there's a flea in it? Oh, if I get diarrhea from that last thing I ate. Oh, if I get seasick in the bus. What? So what was your mind? What were you doing with the moment when you were worrying about all those things that were never going to happen to you anyway? And if any of them did happen to you, it'd be much better that they happened to you and you were happy. You know the expression, die happy. How many of us think we can really do that? We are so happy that we'll die happy. That's a different kind of happy, you understand? It's the one that comes from within. My wife doesn't like me teaching my Book of the Dead teaching, because people get too excited. Like one person said, "Oh, you make death sound like so much fun, I can't wait to try it." Because death is a bliss explosion, because you're getting away from all the stresses and tensions of the ordinary body. And that is also the reason in tantric, symbolism why enlightenment is symbolized as male-female union, as orgasmic energy release. Because the time you get closest to what you experience normally in death is in the time of sexual release. But unfortunately, sexual release just gone, and then there's like more problems. It's definitely the suffering of change. It's have another cigarette. Never mind. Buy some more Viagra. Whatever. Or have a baby and pay $2 million in tuition over the next 30 years. Plus many other worries and problems and work. So therefore, monk, I digressed. Monk, we're meditating now. You're meditating. I'm feeling good because you're excusing yourself from all paltry, mundane objectives. And you are looking as your objective of the quality of your soul, the quality of your awareness, and the quality of your mind, the quality of your heart. And that's what's important, and that's where you want to make your investment, and that's where you want to put your chips and spend your time. In those timeless times, you want every moment to be timeless. And of course, the ultimate challenge is to get so deeply into that you then actually could do things that would look like work. And you could do things for others that would be seemingly, to others might think they would be burdensome, but to you they'll be a total joy, because you won't be doing them in some mundane, driven, ambition way. So this is the mind of transcendent renunciation. And this is true self-love. This is when you really love yourself. You see, because you're not really loving yourself when you're thinking that you should do this and that to get happy, but really underneath you think you can't be happy. And therefore you're settling for just some basic relief, some palliation. You're giving yourself palliative care because you don't think you can heal yourself. Because you're taught that you can't. You see, you're taught that there's nothing you can do about it. God can do it, or you just can blow your own objective work in, you can do it, depending on which version, a distorted version of reality you have bought. So you don't love yourself because you don't even think you can be really happy. You don't think so. If you thought that you could really be happy just from feeling within, like a great engine of bliss inside your own body, you don't need a consort, you don't need anything. Just yourself feeling bliss, feeling complete, because of opening your heart to reality and allowing the bliss of reality to be your heart. If you thought that, and you thought that, with some effort you could unravel the blocks to that in your system, what else would you think would be worth doing? And what else would you spend your time on? Would you really spend your time on anything else? Like making money, or achieving status, or having a new house, or getting a new possession? Would you spend any time on that? Or having a new relation? I don't think so. And therefore the bhikshu and the bhikshuni in the ancient Asian culture, and anywhere it still has some little spark of life, which is very incomplete nowadays, the way the world is. That person is like someone who's thought of as a being on a permanent, lifelong MacArthur Fellowship. They're like a permanent, they're not thought of as someone lacerating themselves and miserable. God, my sin, my punishment, I don't want to suffer for you, God, something like that. No way. Nothing to do with what we think of as, Protestants think of as monasticism formed by sort of Western flagellante type of monasticism. No, these are beings who have realized that ecstasy, nirvana, is the aim they are choosing for life. Now, I told those guys that they didn't play it. What is the meaning of life? Unenlightened life has no meaning at all. It is a complete waste of time. It's just a rushing to death. And therefore it's like already dead, and then it's re-death and death and death, and keeps going endlessly, purposelessly, and has no aim and purpose, and is meaningless. And we can go on with that. We have been going on with that infinitely from the beginningless time. We can continue to go and continue to waste our time. No one will force us not to. However, if we get an inkling of the possibility of life, that life can be bliss, that life can be love, that bliss, love, true love can only come from bliss. You cannot love another if you don't think they can be happy. Because love means wishing them to be happy. You can desire them, want to possess them, play games with them, but you can't love them in the true sense of wanting them to have true happiness unless you think there is such a thing as true happiness. Not just temporary palliation, but true happiness. So, you cannot love anyone until you know that. You cannot love yourself. When you realize that you yourself can have true happiness, that any state of being wrapped around yourself versus the world is never going to be happy. And therefore no such state is worth seeking. You then drop out from any of that seeking and you give yourself a permanent vacation from those kind of mundane preoccupations and drives. And then you just are happy to be here now. But you want to enjoy the now and the here more. And you want to become a professional person being here now. That's your new profession. That's what a bhikshu or a bhikshuni is. Or a devotee. If it's not someone like Milarepa was actually not a monk. He was what was called an upasika. One who was close to seeking proximity to the transcendent renunciate state. So that is now what we have achieved by thinking of these themes, at least imaginatively. We have either achieved it with insight or we are rehearsing the achievement with insight. And we are feeling a kind of relief. And we're feeling a sense of release of pressure in our heart center. Because we are, for the moment at least, entertaining the thought that all of those ambitions and aims and objectives and drives that we think are so necessary are actually unnecessary. They are deluded. They are misguided. We don't need them. And therefore we are excused from all of those obligations. And therefore we can do without all many things. And therefore we begin to feel a welling up of contentment within ourselves, where we are, what we are, how we are, with what we have. And the minute we feel even the tiniest hint of this release, we fall in love with ourselves. Because we realize that we ourselves are an instrument of sensitivity and awareness that can feel real bliss from within our deepest core, body-mind complex, from our deepest chakras. All of them can blossom like flowers and open. And we can be contented with that, no matter where we are, no matter what we are. This is the mind of transcendent renunciation. And the minute we feel this mind, and of course, Nagarjuna, Buddha, Dalai Lama, the Buddha, Shakyamuni, Trongsa, Jesus, Mary, Muhammad, Krishna, Shiva. They just love it when we even think this way. Even we momentarily have a flicker of imagining of this, they just love it. They send us more rays of light, more fresh energy, more oxygen. They just love it. The trees love it. The trees send more doses of oxygen. And we then think about other beings around us. We share this feeling of relief with them, but then we look at them, we notice those beings. We suddenly see the furrows in the brows of the beings we know, that knotted look in between the eyebrows, the sort of hypnotized, kind of glazed look in their eyes, because their mind is not really seeing what is in front of them, because they're thinking about what they're worrying about in the future, what they want, what they don't have, what's going on. They're afraid of something might happen. They're like completely like pinched. And then they have like a pinch around their solar plexus, their diaphragm, that is like crushing the life out of them, actually. And they're like someone who's in a vice, reaching out desperately for a new car or a new lipstick or a new experience or something. And we feel love for them, actually. We can have a glimmering because we have love for ourselves. And we have excused ourselves. And we realize that they need freedom from that deluded structure, that deluded conditioning of false mundane ambitions and worries and needs and preoccupations and false chasing after the fantasies of self-centered nirvana that they run after. So we begin this. This is also the birthplace, therefore, of compassion. It's not only the birthplace of compassion for other beings. True compassion, again, it comes only when you have compassion for yourself. When you realize that you can have a happiness that isn't dependent on some sort of anesthesia, on some sort of distraction, on some sort of possession, on some sort of temporary notoriety or something. It is a happiness that just comes right out of your heart, right out of your chest. So, those beings are so happy with us that we have thought of this. That we are running our mind through it, even like running sand through our fingers, even if it's, at first it seems so strange and odd. Because we're so used to running after and hunting and haunting after things. That we should be all right, just all right. Like Ray Charles, the Bodhisattva Ray Charles told us, right? It's all right. It's all right. That was Buddha talking. Really? That's Buddha talking. Then all the beings in the refuge field, the jewel tree above us, around us, melt into pure light, flow into us. We feel pure light, like the matrix beings we are. Pure energy. No gross gravity. Even with our aches and pains and whatever, that's just all pure light, pure energy, pure teaching. And then we don't want to sit and hold on to that. We want to share it immediately with all the love of the realms. We dissolve into light. And we dissolve into all the beings around us, even our enemies. We just want to be them as happy thems. The only way to get rid of an enemy is to somehow get that enemy to be so happy that they no longer care to be your enemy. Then they won't do anything harmful to you, then you won't see them as an enemy. They'll be so happy they wouldn't possibly want to harm or harm anyone. So here we are.